So what do you say about the brain in 15 minutes or less? I suppose not a lot. But let me start by just giving you a bit of an overview of this incredible human organ called the human brain. There is no such thing as a brain outside of the body, of course. So the brain-body system is what we talk about nowadays. Really, you and I are a brain-body system, and also together we are a collective organism. When we start to work together and collaborate, we start to go into sync. Our brain starts to, as you know, oscillate at certain frequencies, which are then starts to ensure collaboration and leads to phenomenal outcomes of collective creativity. So human intelligence is very much a collective exercise. Now, what I'm going to do with the brain is I'm going to just make a few comments. And I think that's about what I can do. So I'm going to use a few themes to explain in very simple terms what we understand about the brain today. The first thing about the brain is, well, that is the human brain. And in fact, I'm going to try to see if I can move it. Maybe I should just try this. Yeah. If I can do that. Yeah, I can. So this is the human brain. I should stand close. Let me just stay here. Yeah. So this is the human brain that's from the front. I'm going to pretend you know nothing about it, if that is fine. And this is from the back. And this is from the side. That is no, that is yes, and that's us. And this is a phenomenal piece of material, if you may. And look, if this is the prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe. This is in front. That is the back. Now, the back of the brain is a phenomenal place. In fact, this is where we make sense of the world. So what we do is we internalize information from the external environment to make sense of the world. This is an incredibly important point. We don't see with our eyes, that's all rubbish. We see with our brains. And what you see and what you smell and taste, etc., are all actually integrated in that brain, in the back of the brain, which is around there. So that's vision, that's hearing, that's touch, etc., etc. That's of the physical world. We also make internal representations of what is out there in the emotional world. And I'm also becoming quite reductionistic, which is already wrong, right? And we also do it of the spiritual world. Now, the spiritual world is nothing to do with religion, right? It has everything to do with the interconnectedness of cues that you and I do not actually know about necessarily. Mindfulness, of course, enhances that capacity to bring in new information that you and I unconsciously didn't even know about, to declutter information, and then use that very important patterns and form pattern inferences of patterns that you and I, once again, would not have known about. Gives us a way richer internalization of what is out there so that we can use that information to guide us safely through life. And it's all about staying alive, survive, and thrive. And I'll be very brief when I show you how that works in the brain as well. So the first thing is we make internal representations. What the brain then does, it compares it to a map. And that map is memory. The memory is what is really important. So the memory that you and I, the map you and I have, can also be called mindset, worldview, belief system. Those are different concepts, but in a sense, they overlap very much. And the idea is that you and I assign value to an incoming cue based on our mindset. Why am I saying this? Because in an augmented world, we need a very specific mindset. How do you know that? How can we change our mindset? Of course, well, we need consensus about that. That's why leadership is so important. Visionary leadership that says, this is the type of mindset we need. For example, the 21st century learner. We need collaboration. We need complex problem solving. We need to be empathetic. And I can go on. We all have to agree on that. There's consensus. And then we have to believe that. We assign a serious value to that. That becomes the mindset and becomes the map along which we unconsciously internalize information and then really form new memories, solve complex problems. So this is how the brain actually internalizes everything. It actually integrates it in the back. And then the front part of the brain, the frontal lobe, really now is the problem-solving machine. I'm going to just put this down and see if I can just stand here. May I stand behind the podium here? Is this good? Thank you. It's going to be easier. So let me show you how the brain does that. It's quite fascinating. In fact, to do that, I'm going to show you an interesting piece of machinery. This is the problem-solving machine. Here you see the beautiful, most beautiful part of the brain called the hippocampus. So the hippocampus being a seahorse in Latin, the left and a right hippocampus. This is where memories are made. This is also, by the way, our GPS system. And so when memories are made, memories are made by, while you and I are talking at the moment, I internalize the information. That information goes to the hippocampus, which then tonight will send this to your long-term memory sites. You see, there they are. That is vision, that's hearing, and that's touch. And then what's going to happen is that you're going to have this phenomenal pathways in the front. You see these are the prefrontal cortical areas. And can you see these highways there? These are the so-called super highways of the brain, the dorsolateral pathways. It uses this information to actually piecemeal all these properties of knowledge together to give you a realistic scenario of the possible, which is complex problem solving. Now, we have this incredible problem-solving machine which actually needs to guide us safely through life. And tonight, while you're asleep in the unconscious, especially in the latter part of the night when you sleep lighter, when you are awake, when you have chronic stress, right? That part of the night is when you solve most of your complex problems and build memory. And this is incredibly important for our augmented world, that we need to be able to have a very agile, adaptive brain that is able, once again, to have the right mindset, because that determines what kind of memory I'm going to build, what kind of problems I'm going to solve in the unconscious. So that's first and foremost so important. And this is the machine then that we use to solve problems with in the unconscious while you're sleeping. That brings me to another important point, which speaks to the whole brain-body system. So let me use another theme. Another incredibly important theme for the human factor is that the brain-body system needs to be optimized in conjunction with the capacity to internalize information from the external environment. Part of that internalization is also to be able to collaborate collectively. But we'll get back to that just later. I'm first of all just going to use about 2 minutes to talk to you about this internal system, the brain-body system, which is something that I'm pretty familiar with, I hope. And I'm going to speak to you about the wonderful brain-body system. What you see there's a ghost brain, and what you see here is the most basic but incredibly complex part of our brains called the brain stem. It's about as thick as your thumb. It is incredibly important for life. In fact, this is what keeps us alive. You cannot be alive without a brainstem. If your brainstem does not work, you and I are brain dead, right? So it is vital for life. The brainstem regulates a number of very important components and elements of our being. Number one is it looks after breathing. It looks after the heart rate. It regulates the heartbeat system. It regulates hunger and thirst cycles. It regulates sleep-wake. It regulates a number of other incredibly important patterns, which is quite interesting. Even if you walk from far and I see that typical, oh, that is John. Why? How do I know it's John? I mean, I don't see that well anymore, but I can see it's John because John has a very typical pattern of walking. His gait is a certain pattern. And that's all driven by the brainstem. Why am I saying this? Can you see the common denominator here? The brainstem regulates life through rhythms and cycles. It's breathing. It's lub-dub, lub-dub. It's hunger-thirst cycles. It's sleep-wake cycles, etc. The wellness rhythms are absolutely foundational to the brainstem, and it's foundational to our well-being. So wellness rhythms have to be looked after properly. We now have wonderful information about these foundational drivers, if you may, of resilience and high performance to actually set us up for high performance. And we know a lot about them now. For example, high intensity interval training as part of exercise, which by the way speaks to breathing and heart rate, right? So high intensity interval training actually stimulates the release of a human growth hormone, which comes from another part of the brain, which is just on top of the brain stem. I'll show it to you just now. And that stimulates the secretion of something called growth factors in your brain, which grows new brain cells, more connections, and stronger connections in the hippocampus. Remember, we talked about the hippocampus. That's where memories are made. So if you want to really enhance your capacity for building new knowledge, which is so essential to actually enhance your resilience in this rapidly evolving world, you've got to do high-intensity interval training. Please see your doctor before you do that. And I'm going to, in the hotspot session, I will talk about a number of these practical things, right? So it's very important. This is not supposed to happen. Another example is intermittent fasting. intermittent fasting is an incredibly important routine rhythm that we have to exercise routinely. It actually switches off the inflammatory system and makes you more prone to well-being, high resilience. It's been well shown. Now I'm going to, and so by the way, this is all I can say about the brainstem in this very limited time. It is in between the body and the brain. It connects everything. It works through rhythms and cycles. We have to pay attention to that first and foremost. Secondly, I'm going to show you this wonderful structure called the hypothalamus. It is part of the brain stem. It is situated on top of the brain stem. It is the newest part of the brain stem or the oldest part of the brain stem and the newest part of the next system called the limbic system. Why is the limbic system the limbic system? Because limbus is border. And if you look at this view, can you see wonderful brain inside there? Can you see these C-shaped structures there? They all border the brain stem like that. Can you see? And so these structures that border the brainstem together form the limbic system. It's all about the emotional system. This is our goal-directed system that ensures that we stay alive, survive, and thrive in life. And this system is the system that looks after our being together, our social connectedness. In fact, if you look at this little structure, I'll show you the eyes of the monster. Let me get there. These little structures, you see the eyes of the monster? Yeah. Those are called, it looks quite scary. Yeah, at least the eyes are pink and not red. So these eyes of the monster are called the amygdalas, the almonds, the seat of emotion. And so right on top of the brainstem, looking after our wellness rhythms, are the amygdalas, which really ask serious questions. All the time, it scans the environment for value, and that value is all about what's going to kill me. We are very, very, very fearful beings. That's where we come from. The ancestors who thought they could live on their own and survive on their own outside of the caves, our anthropologists tell us, and we absolutely believe that, they were devoured by predators on the plains of Africa, Europe, and elsewhere, and never became ancestors. And so we are really fear-driven, and we stick together in the cave. And so that is all about being together. So social safety is exceptionally important. It is first and foremost, this amygdalas asks the question of how important is anything is happening for my survival, and together it asks how important is this for my belonging, for my identity, that's within the group, and do I have a sense of making a meaningful contribution? I'm saying this slowly and really emphasizing it because you and I are in that life phase where we have to make a meaningful contribution to the group to ensure that we earn our belonging. It's incredibly important. You can forget about building cognitive and all forms of empathy for collective creativity if you do not ensure the social safety. So we say nowadays, first and foremost, establish the commonalities to leverage the diversity. This is one of the most important themes that I think we all have to understand about the brain. And it is incredibly, incredibly basic. This is the pathways that these two, you see the eyes of the monster, actually then take right to the prefrontal cortex. And this process, the so-called emotional system, really ensures that we stick together and that we then are enabled to collaborate. It is the goal-directed system. I'm going to finally say something about collective creativity in the next 30 seconds. It is true. The collective C factor, talk about collective intelligence, C factor, MIT Center for Collective Intelligence, has defined the C factor quite very, very well defined, studied it quite extensively. And we know now that we need equal gender distribution. We need diversity of different ethnic groups, different tribes that have different ways of looking at what is adaptive for the group and to actually ensure that we solve our problems together. We need the glue for collective creativity. That is empathy. And I have to say one more thing about it. Effective empathy is compassion, right? Effective empathy is I feel in your shoes. It gives us a sense of trust, it gives us bonding, it gives us that sense of belonging. It's important. But this is not the real rare commodity. Cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is the real scarce commodity. I think in your shoes. I understand enough of the human condition so that I can think in your shoes and I can allow myself to be changed by you. which means functional fixedness should be reduced. This is the real glue that enables us in the future of this augmented world to enhance our collective capacity greatly. So in summary, you want a brain-body system that is well looked after through wellness rhythms. We know so much about this today now. The other thing is you need to ensure that you are you have a sense of belonging, social safety, and collective creativity. And finally, the problem-solving machine. How do you enhance the capacity? There are many things I'm going to talk about at the hotspot. But if you really want to be extremely innovative, work on your cognitive empathy in the team. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Etienne van der Walt.